Thank you, Madam President. Brazil is one of the strategic partners of the EU, and it's a pleasure now to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil. Mr. President.
Very well, I would like to greet President Pedro Sánchez, President pro tempore of the European Union, for which on his behalf I would like to greet all the heads of state and government of all the delegates attending here. I'd also like to greet my brother, Raf Gonzalez, Prime Minister of San Vicente and Grenadines and pro tempore President of CELAC, for which I would like to greet the heads of state and government and delegations of all Latin American countries and for the Caribbean region. I also would like to greet the President, Charles Michel, the President of the European Council, and Ursula Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Roberta Metsola, the President of the Parliament, the European Parliament, and all the other delegates. My dear friends, the last time I was in Brussels, I need my glasses, it seems. The last time that I was in Brussels, in November of 2021, I made a speech at the European Parliament still as a pre-candidate for the presidency in Brazil. I made appeal for the unity of all countries in favor of the future of our planet and of humanity. On that occasion, I said that in the era of so many uncertainties, will survive only an ancestral certainty. The human being was not made to be alone. In the beginning of the humanity, alone, we would be easy prey for the beasts that exist in those days. 200,000 years after, we're still alone and still more vulnerable vis-a-vis the wars, pandemics, hunger, inequalities, climate change crisis that could take humanity to end its life on the planet. Today, as President of Brazil, I continue to move this forward with the same conviction. I am sure that beyond the fundamentals of trade agreements, this summit meeting between European Union and CELAC represents an important step forward in building a world that we dream, a world that would have more solidarity, much more fraternal and less uneven, and that we will not build this world alone. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to greet the work of the presidency of Spain and St. Vincent and Grenadines for organizing this meeting that didn't happen for 8 years. One of the first acts of the foreign affairs policy, my third term, was to determine for us to come back to CELAC, a forum which the creation of this forum, Brazil has taken great participation. Since its formation, CELAC has built consensus, important consensus, as proclaiming Latin America and the Caribbean region as a peace zone since 2014. We also acted very quickly during the COVID-19 pandemics, and we did not omit ourselves vis-a-vis the challenges of hunger and of unlawful transnational acts. And I would like to make a special mention to the presidency from Mexico and Argentina in CELAC that were essential to reinforce the role of the region in the new coming multipolar order. Dialogues with the European Union, China, India, African Union, and the Association of the Southeast Asian nations demonstrate the plurality of interests in our region. With Europe, we share a long track record of social and economic ties. The cooperation between the two regions should reflect the realities and priorities of both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. For Latin America and the Caribbean region, this could be translated in a clear-cut focus in reducing inequalities and the eradication of hunger and poverty. We would have to find a roadmap to overcome the asymmetries that exist between social and economic development. Initiatives of mobilizing resources and investments are welcome, and they should also include technology transfers and a true integration of the production chain. We need a partnership that would end the International Labor Division that condemns Latin America and the Caribbean region to supply raw materials and migrant labor force that is badly paid and discriminated. The convergence between our regions should not be restricted to the interdependence of our economies. It should also happen in the field of our values. The European Union is a role model of how to build in a democratic fashion. Its legacy in the post-Second World War is the proof that we can overcome the deepest disagreements when there is political will around peace. Our regions are threatened by political extremism, by manipulation of information and fabrication of information, and by the violence that attacks and silence minorities. There's no democracy without respecting diversity, without including the women's rights, the black rights, indigenous people rights, LGBTQI+, poor and migrants. Active policies of social inclusion and in digital and educational inclusion are fundamental for the promotion of democratic values and in defense of the rule of law. The digital revolution brings many opportunities with the new generation of data transmission, Internet of Things, robotics, and with the social media. Populations that lived isolated before, now they have the opportunity to connect themselves, to produce content, to offer and consume services. But there are important challenges that demand coordination between our countries and our regions. It is urgent for us to regulate in the usage of platforms, digital platforms, to fight cyber crimes and lack of information. What is crime in true life should be crime also in the digital world. Apps and digital platforms cannot simply abolish labor laws for which we have fought for such a long time. Precarious work must be reversed. It is also necessary to reclaim an industry that should be intensive in technology and linked to sustainability as the major engine of creating jobs of great quality. The European Union, Caribbean region, Latin America Digital Alliance that we recently launched allows us to advance in the coordination of public policies with a focus in governance, investments, and technology transfer. The initiative of the Secretary General of the UN about the integrity of information and UNESCO's agenda about the regulation of digital platforms also are part of fundamental contribution for the multilateral debate on governance. We want to assure a fair trade relation that is sustainable and inclusive. The conclusion of the Mercosur-European Union agreement is priority that we have, and it should be based on mutual trust and not in threats. The defense of environmental values that we all share cannot be an excuse for protectionism. The purchasing power of the state government is an essential tool for the investments in healthcare, education, and innovation. Its maintenance is a precondition for the green industrialization that we want to implement. To protect the tropical Amazon region is an obligation. We will eliminate deforestation till 2030, but in the tropical forest cannot be seen only as an ecological sanctuary. Sustainable development has three inseparable dimensions: the economic, the social, and the environmental. The world needs to be concerned with the right of living well of the inhabitants of the Amazon rainforest, tropical forest. It's with this objective that we will host, in less than a month from now, a summit meeting of the Amazon countries in the city of Belém in the heart of the forest. Ladies and gentlemen, the model of global governance that we have today makes it continue the asymmetries and increase instability and reduce the opportunity for developing countries. In Haiti, we have a severe multidimensional crisis that will not be resolved if you only approach by migration and security aspects. To overcome that crisis, we will need the mobilization of adequate resources for structuring development projects. The Ukraine war is another confirmation that the UN Security Council does not meet the challenges that we have today to peace and security. Even their own members do not respect the UN Charter. In line with the UN Charter, we do not accept vehemently, we do not accept the use of force as a means to resolve disputes. Brazil supports all the initiatives that were promoted by different countries and regions in the favor to cease fire immediately of the hostilities and a negotiated peace. To use sanctions and blockades without the support of international law serves only to penalize the most vulnerable parts of the population. We need peace to overcome the great challenges that we face, and this implies in deep systemic changes. To split the world in antagonistic blocks would be crazy. We cannot delay anymore the global governance, and this will be one of the main issues during the Brazilian chair of the G20 next year. The legitimate concerns of the developing countries should be met, and we need adequately to be represented in the decision-making bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2021, when I addressed the European Parliament, the world was going through one of its major problems, COVID-19. The pandemic has passed, but humanity seems that had not learned that very tough lesson. We kept the irresponsible habits of consumption that are incompatible with the survival of the planet. Inequality only makes it grow. The rich became even more richer, and the poor became even more poor. 735 million human beings are now under hunger, according to a report that was publicized by FAO last week. And even with all these signs of warning that are being emitted by the planet, even those that deny the climate crisis, and even those that don't deny the climate crisis, they hesitate in adopting concrete measures. In 2009, the rich countries committed themselves to a fund of $100 billion per year for the developing countries as a way to offset the evils that they caused to the planet since the Industrial Revolution. This commitment was never fulfilled. And if that wasn't sufficient, the war in the heart of Europe came to increase hunger and inequality, and at the same time it raised the global military expending. Only in 2022, instead of eliminating the hunger of millions of human beings, the world has spent $2.24 trillion to fool the war machine that only causes deaths, destruction, and even more hunger. This summit, EU and CELAC, is also a way for us to say, enough with that. Another world is possible. We're the ones that should build it, with many hands joining. Thank you very much.
We were listening first to the President of Honduras, who denounced the illegalities and corruption in her country before entering into office and the harm it brought to the Honduran people. President Xiomara Castro condemned coup d'etats in Latin America and the persecution that came after against progressive leaders. She also condemned the daily sabotage attempts and slander campaign against Honduras from the lobbies in Washington, D.C. Xiomara called for the assessment of existing agreements because they have not fulfilled the expectations, and it is imperative to solve the challenges people face. The Honduran head of state said relations between Europe and CELAC must be that of equal and of true cooperation. Xiomara called for peace and that the EU and CELAC must help find peaceful solutions to the conflict in Ukraine. President Xiomara Castro called for the EU-CELAC summit to issue a joint declaration condemning the U.S. blockade imposed against Cuba and denounced the terrible effects it has on the Cuban people. Xiomara also called for the end of sanctions against Venezuela and Nicaragua so that the people can prosper and develop. The Honduran president also called for a true joint international work against climate change. We later listened to the statements of the president of Brazil, Luis Inácio da Silva, on his address at the third EU-CELAC summit, who reiterated his appeal for the unity of countries for the welfare and future of humanity. Lula said that humanity cannot hope to survive alone and only together. Lula da Silva said this summit must work to ensure that a more united world is built. Lula described the importance of CELAC and the milestones it has achieved, declaring the region a region of peace, the joint work during the pandemic to face its effects. Lula said CELAC and the EU must find a roadmap to eradicate the challenges faced by the region. Lula also said that the relation must change. Latin America must not continue to be a provider only of raw materials and cheap labor, but must find a way of true cooperation to enhance economic development. Da Silva said it was urging to regulate digital platforms to fight cybercrime and disinformation, and the Brazilian president said the conclusion of the Mercosur-European trade agreement must be a priority and the protection of the Amazon an obligation. Lula denounced the current global model that only increases differences. The Brazilian president put as an example the Ukraine conflict, as an example that the UN Security Council cannot face the current challenges, especially since some of its members do not respect the UN Charter. Lula called for a deep transformation of the global governance to face the issue impacting humanity. Lula da Silva also denounced the constant increase in the gap between rich and poor, and also denounced the increase in military budget and called for that to be reverted so that more can be spent to eradicate hunger and poverty. We will have more details on this EU-CELAC summit in upcoming news briefs, so stay tuned with teleSUR English.